Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to cover, as we see on the screen, what can we do with AI beyond the productivity of individual consultants. Now, the four things we're going to cover. Firstly, we're going to go through the hypothesis of why the use of AI today in most consultancies is not really going to solve the longer term problem. We'll have a quick look at the market because obviously that's how we have to think about what we're providing. So we look at what customers are demanding, then talk about how an AI layer for a firm operates rather than individual productivity, and then we'll conclude with questions and answers, etc. Okay, so just for your awareness, presenters, myself and Rachi Veerasinha. My background, obviously 30 years in technology, consultancy, basically productizing and systemizing different markets and different firms for different reasons. Rachi, if you introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, the name's Rachi Veerasinha. I'm an ex-managing partner of Gartner Consulting, and I've spent the last 3 years since leaving Gartner advising consultancies on essentially how to increase revenues, either by productizing services, capturing IP, increasing the efficiency of their delivery, and generally systemizing or helping them to systemize the way in which they go about consulting. Back to you, Rob.
Cheers. Okay. So today's we'll take about 40 minutes. This is not going to be a pitch session about TheAX, but just quickly so you know who we are. We're a technology startup working in the consultancy field, started probably October 2024. And what we provide is a mixture of a consultancy operating system platform, a method for AI transformation for consultancies, and obviously our goal is systemization of a firm. Predominantly, though, what we're going to be covering in this session are Rachi and myself's perspectives and views on the market, not necessarily what the TheAX provides. So let's kick off first with a hypothesis. So Rachi, over to you.
Thank you. So essentially, we all know that AI is changing the way in which client expectations and consultancies are seeking to work. And it looks like the first instinct of many consultancies has been to essentially hand individual consultants access to safe versions of public LLMs. And that's been really beneficial to individual consultants in terms of speeding up the way they may produce documents, create marketing collateral, and maybe analyze documents for tender responses. But the problem is that what that does is it sort of speeds up or makes the consultant faster. It doesn't really benefit the firm. So the judgment is still very much, and the sort of quality control is still very much in the gift of and reliant upon seniors. The delivery, the way in which consulting works is still unstructured. It's very much in the repositories of individual consultants, and the firm isn't benefiting necessarily from the increases in or changes to the IP in the way that they should be. And the whole model itself isn't changing. So the firm itself is still reliant upon this thing around headcount. And essentially, if you have to reduce headcount, you can't expect greater revenues. The two are intertwined. So essentially, what this AI is currently doing is it's speeding up making a consultant faster, but that isn't going to cut it in the future. If we go to the next slide. So the hypothesis we're going to explore today is that in the changing market and the changing client expectations, what is going to work. And our hypothesis is that a more scalable and systemized model is required. And we're going to call that the AI layer of the firm. And essentially that is about so breaking that tie between headcount and revenue, and making use of the intellectual property, of the data, of the insight of a consultancy but not having that tied to headcount in order to be able to create new services and generate revenues. And so you're probably asking, so what does this AI layer look like? And this is something that me and Rob have been discussing, I guess, for quite a while now, around this. But essentially, it's safe to say that there is no established blueprint at this point. So what I think we need to do first of all is look at the way in which the market is changing, and client expectations are changing. Rob, back to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so let's dig into this this hypothesis. Okay, 101, start from the market, build backwards in terms of what the market wants. Now, this is a story we all know. We're not going to be sitting here on this this webinar repeating the typical the pyramid is inverting, it's the death of consultancy, etc., etc. But what we do know in the marketplace, and I think everybody knows this, is that there's becoming an imbalance in supply and demand. On the supply side, you've got consultancies working in probably a traditional way that they've always provided consultancy through the individual, which is slow, costly, expensive, etc., on fixed projects. But on the demand side, clients are living in a much more rapidly changing world, and they are looking for much more measurable outcomes. They're looking for faster decisions and adaptive advice. They're also getting used to using AI themselves. That's the default for most of us today. Go to your AI. So there's this rapid change going in the marketplace. We don't believe it's the death of consultancy. Quite the opposite. We think that there just needs to be a rebalancing of the supply and demand side. So that's the foundation which we've worked from in our analysis. So if we look at the rebalancing of supply and demand, you've got what is it that clients actually want? So that is the outcomes, it's faster decisions, it's adaptive advice, lower cost, higher quality, etc. That means if consultancies are going to supply those things, they need to focus on those outcomes, systemizations, etc., etc. But if we go back to the hypothesis that I've actually went through, if we look at an individual consultant with an LLM doing things faster, do they deliver outcomes? No. Do they deliver systemised discovery and diagnostic? Well, they might give faster decisions, but then not necessarily quality decisions, etc., etc. So quite clear to us, really, isn't it, Rachi, that the individual consultant is not going to be aligned with what clients are asking for.
Yeah, can I just break this down a bit more in a bit more detail and provide some examples around it? Essentially, I've been on many projects recently where clients are demanding more evidence of the impact of what you're doing as an external in an organization, so that they can measure and monitor the impact that you're making in that organization. That's about achieving those outcomes. And because of the availability, frankly, of LLMs in the hands of clients, they're becoming more and more used to faster decisions, being able to access information quickly. And so we need a systemized approach around how we go about providing value in the delivery process. And the classic final presentation in a PowerPoint is probably not going to cut it in the future, in that again, with insight, with business intelligence and interactive sort of analysis, and then things like LLMs providing clients a much more interactive way of looking at things, they're going to want to look at the advice that we give them as consultants and look at it from different angles, different scenarios. And I don't think, or we don't think jointly between us, is that a static deliverable is really going to cut it in the future. It's about adaptive advice. It's about providing information and value as the organization is changing. So it's very much pointing to a far more interactive experience and for the client, and that is about systemizing. Rob, back to you.
Thanks, Rachi. Okay, so when we talk about systemization, we have this picture of how the world evolves. So on a scale from complete manual consultancy to automated advisory, what happens at different levels within this evolution of consultancy firms? Now, there's three levels probably that consultancy firms operate at today. That's the complete expert led. Might have frameworks and processes, but pretty much get to this productized level. And these are areas that we're all used to. Aligned with that, we've got day rates and fixed pricing, etc., which actually we'll talk about other commercial models in a bit more detail a bit later. But today we hit the structural barrier. Is that there's nothing much beyond this productization. That's starting to change, which we'll dig into in a little bit more detail. But that's the traditional landscape. Where individual consultants are working with AI is pretty much at the levels 1 and 2 in terms of what they do. It's not pushing any further than that. But at the same time, we know the market is going to this outcome-led, even outcome pricing scenario, where that's what clients are demanding, which involves much more systemization, much more automation, and also measuring those outcomes as you go. And you extrapolate that a little bit further, you're at this consultancy, what we call consultancy as a system level, where you have more completely automated advisory. Now, this may sound science fiction. We may say it never will happen, etc. But things like PwC-1, they're launching in March. They are already there. They're supplying systems at that level, which are self-serve systems. They might have a consultant in the back end doing various things, but parts of those platforms are completely automated as well. So this is where the future is going. So even if for our consultancy we're not ready to go there yet, it's something that has to play a part in strategic thinking. So actually, can you talk a little bit about the commercial models that you see underneath these?
Sure. I think everyone in terms of consultancy are very much focused around, well, how do we achieve an outcome-based or value-based pricing approach? Because they see absolutely the need then to break away from this tie around FTE, resource, and then price. The challenge, though, is how do you achieve that without looking for opportunities, frankly, to automate what the consultant does. Now, if you're providing information and providing value on a day-by-day basis, actually, I just want to talk about subscription for a second. That is probably an even more scarier thing to think about, but logically, it does make sense if you're providing information that is being accessed on a daily basis to help a client adapt and adopt to the way in which it's seeking to achieve a set of outcomes. They're probably willing to pay, or they are therefore then willing to pay for daily advice and daily sort of updates to the information that they're looking for. That's subscription based. That is and that is the next logical thing beyond outcome based and value based approach. So that's really what we're trying to describe here about the evolution of the commercial model underneath that, underlying each of these levels as well.
Yeah. So I've got just to mention here also, the worst thing that a consultancy can do is try and leap to a new commercial model without the actual delivery mechanisms underneath. The pricing mechanisms should really be following the models. So how do we push forward then across these new phases that we're seeing, these new levels? Now that's where the AI layer comes in. So what do we mean by an AI layer? So if we look at what we're really doing within consultancy, most of the investment and most of the work, it happens at this layer above the iceberg, etc. It's about propositions and pricing. It's all lots of productization work, which consultancy firms are used to. Now, the bit that then needs to be addressed to allow this systemization and progress to be made is about how decisions are actually made, how things are sequenced, how diagnostics happen, etc. This is the stuff that typically lives in the consultant's head, but it's the thing that you need to put into an automated layer to enable this systemization of consultancy to work. This is the AI layer. So So of course, I can hear, everybody screaming in the background, oh, you can't replace consultants and etc. And we've said you can't replace them. There's judgment within consultants that you just can't put into a system, and you shouldn't even try. So this AI layer and what you need to do around it still maintains the human doing the human things, but the things that become a system are the things that can be repeatable around the journey. So a good way of looking at this is, don't try and systemize the expert, systemize everything around them, let them perform their functions while this platform can perform its own function. So that's a little bit about the systemization that sort of aligns with what the clients are needing in the market and where the market's going to, etc. So the natural question then is, well, how do we do this? What's involved, etc. Now, if we look at what has happened traditionally within consultancy firms, you've got this stage one, it's got the individual consultant. Stage two, consultancy firms again are very used to. They document the consultancy's knowledge, create playbooks, they've got frameworks, etc. This stage three we're talking about is a natural progression for taking that kind of knowledge into a system. And the way that we look at it, there's three different areas that enable this to happen. There's what we call capability maps, there's outcome pathways, and there's creating that as one continuous system. So we'll touch on these very quickly. We don't have time to drill into each of these and explain it to the nth degree. We probably need a separate webinar on each to do that. So firstly, capability maps. So contrary to, I think, where a lot of people were with AI when AI first came out, it's not about throwing lots of information at AI and hoping it's going to give you good, accurate information and not hallucinate. It's about curating your information. So if you think about the information that a AI needs to act like a consultant, it starts with an understanding of capabilities, because that's the foundation. What are capabilities? Because what are you trying to assess? Because capabilities drive outcomes, and that's how you get results within any organization. You improve capabilities, an outcome happens. If you've got low capabilities, you have low performance and low outcome. Now, action should be therefore geared around how you improve capabilities, and KPIs can measure and give you those metrics of what changes as a result of those actions. You then have various other elements around this, such as what's the perception of people working in the firm. You can ask them questions. You can say, oh, I think we do it this way. I think we do it that way. We're this good or we're not. But what are the symptoms they experience? What's their lived experience that they actually experience on a day-to-day basis? And what's the evidence that proves you've improved capabilities? Now, this creates a map. If you can segment any area of expertise into these types of areas, you end up with a maturity model that we're used to, your capabilities spread over levels, which you can measure, but you also end up with other elements around that which the AI can work with. They create this ontology, this map of the world, together with what outcomes that drives. So this obviously gets quite technical in terms of how it's all structured, but fundamentally it's these elements that are in a consultant's head and how they piece together subconsciously to drive things. Right, have you got anything to add to that?
I was going to chip in on this. When I first saw this, and I think it was Ian who coined the phrase atomic model, but this model that Rob has developed, it sort of blew my mind a bit, because if you think about it, why do external organizations, why are they brought in to help an organization? It's because they're looking to either create, modify and hopefully improve, or remove a capability. So by putting capability at the heart of this, what we're doing is we're creating a model of how consulting works. And by then the AI looking at this as a core building block, and then how outcomes are affected by that, how outcomes are measured by KPIs, how symptoms and evidence are used against a capability. it creates interesting opportunities to then gather information across clients and use that in a comparative way, potentially around benchmarking as well. But start informing your clients around how others are doing, because that comparative information is going to be critical going forwards. Rob, back to you.
Yeah, just the final point of that as well. This is how you then grow IP as well. If you can structure data in this way for AI, AI can then monitor what were the outcomes of a specific action. Did it improve capability? Did it not? And then over time, for every engagement that a firm does, you will then create a self-learning model. So this is the future of where AI can really add value in this AI layer. It's not just about sucking in information and creating a better report, a better proposal. It's about fundamentally gathering your expertise in a self-improving model. Second thing to look at is obviously, you've got to deliver that in some way. So we have this phrase outcome pathways. So just the difference between an outcome and pathways and a project plan. A plan is where you've got a sequence of actions. You create your plan today, and then off you go, you execute your plan. Of course, a project plan gets out of date a day after you've created it. As soon as you start delivering it, circumstances change. So for the AI to work successfully, you need to create a thought process or an outcome pathway, which is a continuous improvement really, where you create a hypothesis or based on baseline data. Based on that, you get evidence coming in of what's changing. Was it done? Was it not? Did it improve the KPI? Did it improve the capability? And based on that, you get a continuous feedback loop that evolves and adapts, heading towards your defined outcome that the client wants. But that kind of process, though, then leads us back to the level 4, where you've got an outcome-led consultancy, where you, from the beginning of your engagement with a client, you can define this is the outcome that you want, this is how we're going to do it, and then your engagement with them is all geared around what do we need to improve in your organization to drive that outcome on a repeatable basis. So you also then need to think about that, how you're going to run it on a continuous basis and an integrated basis. So if we look at, simplistically, the pre-sales discovery process, etc., you then end up with layers within your firm. You've got this atomic model at the bottom, the systemised element being driven by AI. You've got how the consultant works, using their judgment, interacting with that system to guide them, to do the work for them, etc. But then you also need to think about the client experience side as well. Now, this becomes really important when you create access for the client into the system. So this is a portal kind of approach where the client can not only gain get access to dashboards, which can say, are you on track, are you not? That's not very helpful. But they gain access to what data has been collected, what were the results were, even using your AI as a firm to actually do inquiries on that and getting results from it. So this is much more of an interactive experience backed up by the consultant, but the foundation being your firm's knowledge, your firm's expertise, and your atomic model around AI. As I mentioned earlier, that then leads to this natural conclusion that you put this thing together as a system, it becomes self-improving. But probably more important for firms, you also get to a point where new work will follow the outcomes that you deliver, particularly if you're working on a maturity scale. You can work with a client to get them from level 1 to level 2. They see the results, they'll engage you further from level 2 to level 3, etc. And that's how everything works on a continuously improving basis. So I'm not going to go through this diagram in nth degree because this is quite complex, but just the principle here really is that if you think about a consultancy operating system being aligned to the level of business that you want to operate, if you want to operate on a productized level, you take elements from the system, and as you move up the scale, you can utilize different other elements in an operating system. But the foundation of it is always this invisible layer that we've just gone through. Okay, so just to bring it together and to conclude on what we've been discussing. So what changes then? So the the change that you see in a consultancy firm will very much depend on who you are. For the owner, you're going to get an impact of margin. You can see that your ceiling lifts away in terms of growth, etc. Maybe new commercial models you can exploit, etc. This is high value for your ownership. But for the consultant, you also see a different aspect within the business. This is much more about how the individual can be freed up. The system is doing a lot of the grunt work, etc. So they get a better job. It's not a smaller one. So this is where we feel that you end up. Okay, so what value do we get from this? So from business change, you'll get productivity and benefits. This is an integrated process, giving you faster and lower cost delivery, etc., based on your outcomes. Fully AI enabled, and then, as we've mentioned before, evidence follows. So, but you also at the next level up, you get this leverage to break the headcount ceiling. This will also you'll drive growth in terms of new commercial models, which we touched upon earlier, and this compounding IP. And finally, what you really end up with all of this is a much more high valuation firm, because your knowledge doesn't sit in a consultant that's going to walk out of the door when they leave. It sits in your firm, it grows with your firm, etc. So this is really the difference between business change and business transformation. Once you go down this route, if you can get this right in terms of an AI layer, it can fundamentally change how your business operates through this systemization approach.
Can I just chip in there?
Yeah.
I mean, there is this thing called practice and practice development within consultancies, and I think this is all around enabling the practices who harvest intellectual property to really get to the point where that they should be getting to. I know many consultancies practice development is not necessarily the be all and end all and the first thing that they think about, but it is about harvesting the IP, and it's by bringing the process of consulting into a system, you're now able to then start capturing that IP. And that really does lead to then evidence that the organization, not just from a backlog perspective, in terms of the clients that it's engaged with and the books that it has with those clients, but then also the evidence around the intellectual property that it has and the data that it has. So it does very much lead to a higher firm valuation as part of that.
Thanks, Archie. So, whilst we're trying to focus on what is happening today, but also predict the future, we can extrapolate the kinds of benefits that we will see in the future more and more, based on what's happening and also what we can see. There's obviously going to be a reduction in senior time per engagement. Margins will be growing as a result of this, but this will all be driven off the back of this repeatable delivery logic. And we could probably say from what we were seeing already in terms of our work with people that you can get probably 80 to 99% reuse of the knowledge through these outcome pathways, etc. 80% to begin with, but 99% is where you end up with the continuously improving knowledge, etc. within the system. Okay, so just to really finish off, really, we can go on this journey, I think, really, in terms of systemization, but we're human beings. So what does it feel like to us at the end of that? I think these 4 points really sum it up for us. We believe so. It's self-improving. So every engagement is going to add value to the firm. There's more time for people. The senior person still leads the engagement, etc. But they're no longer the bottleneck in terms of the delivery. Then things are no longer dependent solely on those individuals. Fundamentally, though, it goes back to the point we were talking about earlier: is that you give an individual consultant access to AI, they become faster, But when you focus on the firm in this way, the firm grows in value. And finally, the key thing is relationships are cemented, because you can provide a much better service to clients, but also a more sticky service as well. If you get to the point where the clients are engaging with your system through your portals, with their knowledge in that, with their data in it, it creates a continuous advisory system for them, which does become very, very sticky. Okay, so if we flip back to the hypothesis, then Rachi, how would you sum up what we've covered in terms of this?
Well, I think the key thing that we've said time and time again on this call is it's about how do we make sure that we exploit AI to benefit both the individual and the firm. And it is about this AI layer for the firm. And I think we've really explained quite a lot around how that might look like, but very happy to go into that in more detail.
Just for everybody's benefit, we've taken you through what our thoughts are in terms of where the market's going, etc., what the problems are with the AI used today, and where it needs to go. Two ways really to engage with us really further, if you wish to. There's firstly, book a chat with us, etc. We can take you through what your specific issues are for your firms, maybe show you a bit of the platform, etc., and see how what we've described today might fit with what you're doing. But secondly, we have a much more engaging session that we run called an AX Envision session. This is free to book, and what this involves is we'll take you through, you and your team, through a process of benchmarking where you are in terms of your journey today with the utilization of AI, and identify how are the things that you could adopt AI within your business. Very much a discussion point for your team to think about their strategy. Well, thanks very much for those who did manage to attend today, and obviously, we look forward to engaging with the others that couldn't quite make it. So thanks very much, everybody.
Is all. Thanks.
Cheers.